Good morning. This is the Sharing World podcast. We've got a returning guest today, Jen Freedson.
Hello.
And are we going to go by Matt
We'll
today
just
or Matthew?
we'll just say Matthew Martens. Hello. Yeah.
Well, welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Jen is a local entrepreneur, mom, community organizer, and many other things into sustainability and nature and how to bring all that together, synthesize it. And Matthew, reference librarian, and
Beverly Public Library.
Beverly Public Library, just over here. And if you walk up the stairs at the library, Matthew's right there. Like,
Unless you do it right now, because I'm right here.
And what was interesting about our last interview, I didn't realize how much you do for the library. Technology and
Programming, collections, outreach of various kinds, for sure. Yeah, there's quite a bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know we spoke of you being interested in maybe a philosophy group at the library.
Yeah, that has not yet happened. The German group that I discussed has happened for the first time. We had a meeting in December. We'll meet again actually next week.
Nice.
It's called Abendgespräch. We meet on the, I guess it's the second Wednesday every other month. So that's not intuitive, but that's the way it is right now. So February 12th is our next meeting, this coming Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And that's got some elements of a philosophy group. We were talking about Heidegger a little bit the last time. So there you go.
Okay. And can you tell me who's Heidegger?
Heidegger.
He's a philosopher.
He's a German philosopher, early to mid 20th century, politically, as the kids say today, problematic, but a very important figure in the development of existentialism as well as philosophical critique towards technocracy and technological society and so on. He came up in the context of language, though, and his coinage of the term Dasein, which is not something that exists as such in German, but philosophers just kind of make things up, coin things. Yeah. So it's the single word Dasein as opposed to the two words of Da and Sein, and together in Heidegger they essentially mean being. Yeah, Dasein means being. So there you go. That's Heidegger, yeah.
And technocracy has come up recently.
Well, we've got some enemies, a certain kind of enemy of technocracy in the White House right now, even though I'm sure he's not familiar with the term and would have difficulty pronouncing it. Should I say that? Anyway, done, I said it. And of course in Elon, it's an interesting, situation we're in now where you have people who are both technocrats and who consider themselves the enemies of technocracy. I mean, Elon Musk is the most obvious example. He's a billionaire. I mean, he's, through Tesla and through SpaceX, obviously he's got, intellectual and sociological bona fides with respect to science and engineering, but at the same time, he's trying now through Doge to kind of undermine the very idea of government by experts. So.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I heard his grandfather started a technocracy, was the founder of a technocracy party, like way back.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. So it's kind of fascinating. But yeah, so super interesting. And I just wanted to kind of check in with both of you guys. Here we are 5 months since the last time we got together, and I really feel like I don't have to say this, the world has changed, you know? It just feels different, And so the things I've been thinking about is like, how do you build community when the conditions aren't ideal, And I guess that's always the case, but there definitely seems to be a ratcheting up of intensity in this sort of like, oh boy, we're in for a ride, And So there's like a, paradoxically, and I think we maybe spoke about this before, it's sort of the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah.
And how to effectively move forward in community building and bringing people together, irrespective of party or anything like that. So I just kind of wanted to check in with both of you, and I'll start with you, Jen. Like, what's on your mind, and what are you up to?
Thanks for the tee up.
Sure.
I feel like something that's always really mattered to me and come to the forefront of the life I want to live is curiosity and connection through curiosity. And when I come from that place, when I do whatever the things are that as an individual I need to feel grounded so that I can be curious instead of, say, on guard, which this current climate, environmentally, but also just like social ecosystem, make me feel. If I don't do those things, I find that I can either be looking down if I'm not taking care of myself so that I'm asking questions and being in connection, or when I feel calm and grounded because I'm caring for myself, then I can reach out. I can be ready to receive information from people and not judge it so much as want to learn more about where it comes from. And that's all very like existential, but I think ultimately what that really means for me is I care about all living beings. And from a humanity perspective, I want to be close, not far away. And I think that means I choose to do the care for myself so that I can be in community with others instead of retreat out of the fear of like, this is all too much, or feeding into the chaos that seems to be created purposefully to drive us apart. Like, I want to be close with people. But there's certain things I know I need to do in order to follow through with that instead of feel emotionally drained by the environment, the like social environment. So that kind of perfectly tees into the second question about what am I up to. I think I nodded a little bit last time to the fact that I've been very fortunate to build my own business in the past with some really special people to me and be a part of other new businesses and startups, but it's time to build a new one again for me right now. And it's one that's been on my heart for a long time. And I'm a patient person. And I feel like it's finally birthing, and it actually feels incredibly timely. So it's baby stepping, but essentially it's going to be called, or it is called Soul Tide. It's spelled soul like sun, the Latin term. But it also is meant to evoke our heart space, our souls. And the intention of it is to use basically hot, cold therapies in community with others. Think globally, historically, community bathhouses where there's geothermal or saunas, cold plunges. It depends upon where you are in the world, what people have leaned more into.
Right.
But here, I've felt like the combination of the heat and the cold allow me to ground, but then feel really clear and awake. And to be able to do that with other people, not just by myself, is such a gift to be able to feel like I'm not on guard when in, say, a hot sauna that's technically stressing my body, you know? But I feel like I can ask questions. I'm metaphorically and physically stripped down, you know?
Right.
So you can just see people as people and then have these really interesting dynamic conversations. And from that, then go out a little clearer on how I want to show up in the world and show up with others, build these relationships. So essentially, Soul Tide is going to be a space where people can enjoy hydrotherapy together, saunas, cold plunges, hot tubs, but do so from a place of love, and essentially come out of it hopefully a little clearer about how you want to show up in the community. Timing wise, there's a ton of science that's come out
No
over
doubt.
the years to support the emotional, physical well-being attributes. But what lands most to me, even though I do care about those things, is really the way it can connect us together. And it's, again, when you look at different places all over the world, historically, they really are an amazing way for people to socialize. In places of conflict, they bring saunas to borders where individuals are in high stress situations to try and detoxify and create connection. It's so anywho, it's beginning as a consulting company with the opportunity to support people in their living spaces in integrating it, while I physically build out a space where I can host this as well. So it's going to be a two-part. I want it now, but it's all patience and just, pacing. So Soul Tide.
Yeah.
So you
Beautiful.
do
That's
mean
what's up.
eventually to provide the technology itself,
Correct.
people can come in.
In the
get all
near
this.
future, that's
Yeah.
coming. It's first stage. In the meantime, I'm building off of a lot of the experiences I've been fortunate to have over my adult career of project managing, designing, and really like listening to people. So going into their spaces and saying, what matters to you as a household? Where are these gaps in the way that your space is supporting you or not? And how can I help you conceptualize them? And then if I don't physically have the skill myself, bring on the contractors, the craftsmen, individuals, the sourcing practices to be able to integrate that into your space. So that's my immediate happening now. And the physical is in 2025.
Beautiful.
In the works. Yeah.
So thanks for listening to my
Oh, sure.
diatribe on that one.
No, not at all. I took a hot bath last night.
There we go.
I
Hey,
cleaned the tub
yes,
and got the Epsom salt out.
yes.
And just for the very reasons you were saying, just to kind of get back to zero in a sense,
Awesome, Sean. Yeah.
So I hear you,
And it is very timely, right? I mean, personally for you, but also socially in terms of people's awareness of these practices around the world. I mean, certainly saunas are having a real moment here, the cold plunge, all of that stuff, and possibly contributing not just to mental health but to physical as well, and longevity and all of that stuff. So we're reading a book in my book group in April called Kairos
Okay.
by Jenny Erpenbeck. Kairos is the Greek term for a version, maybe you're familiar with it, but a version of time that isn't just duration or sequence, but is about appropriateness. It's about Kairos refers to timeliness or the happy moment. It sounds like you've got a Kairos situation happening with respect to that business idea. So
That's that patience piece, right? It's like when we listen, the moments that things are ready to be birthed, like really do come to you
Right,
instead
exactly.
of forcing something. And
Exactly.
that, like how fast, how maximizing efficiency,
Right.
maximizing
Sure, yeah.
pace, like, all
Right.
of that. I have an aversion
give it time,
to
give
that.
it space, and it
Yeah.
will happen. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I hear that. I feel that. And I think that much like my previous business with my best friend and my sister, I feel like this one is being presented in the form of hydrotherapy as the core offering, but it's really about building connection with one another.
Multiple. Yeah.
And it just happens to be in the form of, I didn't
Sure.
wake up and be like, I want to start a hot tub company. Like that's not what it was. It's what are the ways that feel fluid and true to me that I can offer. And I'm fortunate to be, I have a skill in building and creating spaces that are comfortable and approachable, I think beautiful, and I think we all deserve access to that.
Absolutely. Just off the cuff, we all deserve access to the ocean.
We all deserve access to the
Cut
ocean.
off from the ocean.
Sean, I couldn't agree more.
But,
We do pretty well with
Well, we do
respect
pretty-
to that here. Yeah.
But God love Beverly too,
Yeah.
right? We have
Yeah.
Main Street Beach and Independence Park, and also Lynch Park, and a few other public access spots, which a lot of communities, and it's open to everyone. Like
Right.
anyone can come in,
Yeah.
which is totally cool.
Yeah,
So we are walking the talk in that sense.
I think
But,
so. Yeah.
I think that takes staying aware and alert, because I think that could shift if the dynamic of the citizens weren't committed to keeping it that way.
It definitely
that make
could.
sense?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think much like our political climate right now, if we get a little sleepy, things
Yeah.
can be pulled out from underneath
Yeah.
us. You know what I mean? So I think there's an engagement component.
It's certainly
Sorry to derail, but that's just a
extremely
thought, the
valuable
relevance.
real estate. That could definitely, there's a lot of money to be made there potentially. And so, but that's not the only priority of the city or of its citizens. So that's good.
And it's-
I've actually thought of how that could be an act of resistance from a place of love, to be able to have the ability to purchase property or properties
Mm-hmm.
and turn them into, say, spaces like I'm describing at a sliding scale capacity that are highly approachable to anybody who wants it. It's not to assume everybody wants
Right.
or
Sure.
is attracted to it at any particular time, like what I'm talking about for Soul Tide, but to be able to offer access without it being for a select few, I think is so important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like what sort of like Endicott has done is bought up properties along the coast, And I was like, why can't, Beverly could certainly buy a property along the coast, just open it up,
After the HVAC is taken care of at the library. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I speak for the library.
There are, I'm sure, a long list of things that need to be done, for
Right.
sure. And that segues to you, Matthew, and it's Matthew, right?
That is
That's
correct.
the correct spelling.
Yes, that's true.
So I know on the last time it was only a single T.
On the YouTube.
Right, so I'll make sure we
That's
get
true.
the correct one on that. But
Yeah.
so what's what have you been up to, and what's been on your mind?
Well, to kind of follow up on what Jen was saying, I mean, there's a certain amount of getting, and what you were saying as well, a certain amount of getting back to basics, focusing on fundamentals with respect to the question that you posed at the outset, about community and how, and not just community, but how we do the things that we know are important or we feel are important during times of stress and uncertainty, where the foundations perhaps for the kinds of things that we do and or want to do are don't feel entirely trustable. Let's put it that way. To me, I'm very fortunate in my line of work in that I've got fundamentals ready all the time in terms of, if the question is, what am I supposed to be doing? How can I help? Well, I'm paid, and luckily I also love to help people in a particular context, which is that of librarianship. The needs that people have in the area that I specialize in haven't particularly changed. They could change in certain ways because of the forces that we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about political issues, certainly economic issues. We need in the field of librarianship to be ready to deal with, changes in terms of our patrons' needs, perhaps around immigration, perhaps around, who knows, changes in taxation, if that should happen. We need to continue to be what we've always been, but in new circumstances, which is a reliable, trustworthy source for essential information, especially at a time, and this is not that different than it was when we last met with respect to the internet, but it's probably a little bit worse than it was then. You need there to be a space that you can rely on to sort of cut through the noise. Mm-hmm. And everyone is, of course, capable to a certain extent to do this entirely on their own, should they choose to do so. But to know that you're also embedded within a community of people that includes folks who are completely committed to exactly that, and are ready to provide assistance to you free of charge. I think that we know that that's what we do. It means that we are at least as important and valuable in people's lives as we were before, and perhaps a little bit more so right now. And then also, in terms of like, how does it affect us emotionally, psychologically, when you're, say, a city, a municipal employee, or a government employee of any kind, certainly federal employees right now, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of insecurity, The two best ways probably to deal with that, the most obvious ones, are do your job as well as you possibly can, and keep talking with your coworkers and the people that you serve, the communities that you serve, so that you maintain this sense of what is needed, and you maintain a sense among the people around you of your own importance and value. That's generally, I think that's the way I feel about the present moment with respect to the work that I do, and that librarians do, or social workers do, all of that. But I mean, I want you can follow up.
Well, something's come to mind. Like to be your own leadership on an individual level.
Yes.
But you have support within the community to further that and partner with that. And the library is an excellent partner.
Yeah.
Where you could initiate something and then have the library as a resource to move forward with that.
And there is actually, I wanted to say too, it's kind of a fascinating dynamic at play right now that is the result of the current administration's accelerating push towards decentralization. And, ideologically, decentralization, can be either right wing or left wing. It's not obviously conservative or liberal, but the way in which it's being pursued right now is, of course, in the service of the idea that that government is wasteful, that bureaucracy is wasteful, that we need to defederalize and frankly, communalize, if you will.
If that's the result, I like that. Yeah.
But of course, it's not coming from the same place that we're coming from. It's more in terms of this ideology of, and nothing against entrepreneurs, but clearly, of entrepreneurship over, community, or let's say collective effort and organization. Let's say it pits entrepreneurship versus government. Now, does that need to be the case? Is that an obvious and necessary dichotomy? I don't think so, but that's certainly the way that it's being thought of by the current administration. But one of the results of that potential, still at this point, kind of federal pulling out of the rug out of states and communities in terms of their funding and support and so on, and saying, hey, you do it all. Now, how about the fires in LA and the president saying, I'm going to get rid of FEMA. The states should be responsible for this kind of thing. And of course, you can say, well, that sounds terrible, and that was my reaction to it. It's going, oh my God, how? Yeah. But then, of course, there is that other side to it, which is this is a recognition of the importance of, smaller community, a sort of a lower, or at least an other tier of government, and a different way in which communities run themselves. And so we become, and by we, I mean we who are members of communities on a level beneath that of the federal, become more important. And in some ways, this is like our moment, have to step up and fill that. Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And so how do we do that? Now that that's inevitable, right? How do we step forward and create community collaboration, new ways of doing things? Like what are your ideas on like how to do that? Like if you look at BevCam coming downtown, the membership is pretty inexpensive, and it can be used as a window into the community, whether it be politics or democracy or this conversation that we're having. So it sort of can be leveraged into some of the things that we're talking about
Yeah.
and addressing.
Yeah.
For instance, if you had a podcast, a philosophy podcast, or Jen had a podcast on hydrotherapy and the benefits of it, So we're at this at this point of like, okay, this is like paradoxically empowering the communities, because it's all that sovereignty is kind of coming back to the states,
Right.
back to the community. So how do we set ourselves up to move forward in a, I don't know, I don't quite not articulating the way I want to, but
Well, it's hard in part because we don't know exactly what the dispensation is going to be.
and in some of that, have we given our power away to Washington and to, in a sense, where we don't almost kind of lost the ability to kind of do these types of things? I don't say we have, I don't think we have entirely, but
to an extent,
to an
we
extent,
have,
though, yes, we
and-
have ceded, so maybe
That's what makes it a contract, right? Social contract. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. So
you are going to have to give some things away, but yeah.
yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on just what I've thrown out there?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind, and I don't want to be a broken record, but is just this, like, look up, look around, engage, and instead of allowing a sense of overwhelm or whatever your feelings might be to kind of go inward, or to just spend time with or be in community with individuals that are totally like-minded. I think that it is a hard but an important practice to go to spaces purposefully and engage with people purposefully, whether it's in the line at the coffee shop, somebody you've never met before, and saying hello, and then having it come to the next question and the next engagement, and learning what people who you live with are going through, what they're sensing. And I think that a lot of people can present anger, and at least in my own life, what is below anger is often hurt. And if we're not engaging long enough to understand what's below that, like, anger facade, then how do we actually solve problems together? And the other piece is, like, I don't think, actually, it's really interesting. Amanda, thank you so much, behind the camera today, and I talked about this for a brief moment before we started. In some ways, many of us societally, not all, potentially don't have enough, like, rub on a day-to-day basis to know that we can do hard things and make it to the other side of that hard thing, and then learn from that and build resilience. And so I am not in any way, I want to be very careful to not take away people's experiences or variety of hardship. And I think there's a practice in feeling uncomfortable and facing that discomfort that allows us to actually come out stronger. So all I want to come back to is, it might feel tricky to imagine connecting with somebody you don't know or going to a space you're not used to. And I feel like that's how we grow. That's how we see each other. That's how we actually come closer together as a community, instead of kind of partitioning off into these polarized groups, which sort of feels like what the intention is governmentally at the moment is, and has been for a long time, regardless of who the political standing is just this, like, stay in your corner over here, stay in your corner over here. It's like, we get to choose as an individual, and I'm a big advocate for our individual power that I don't think we should give up by thinking it's all being controlled, So, riffed off that as you.
No.
Yeah.
My thoughts.
Yeah. And it's, circling back to BevCam, and I had interviewed Rob Chapman, the director, last time, and we were talking about, this was on his bio, that community media is active. It's participatory, and the legacy media is more passive. And so I just, and then BevCam coming downtown, and being in proximity of the library. So I just think it's has great potential to address. There's like all sorts of things that need to be addressed, but community access media
Oh, no question.
is a great tool for people to kind of step up and do a podcast on food or food insecurity or climate or what have you.
As long as everybody of every stripe feels that it's available and accessible to them,
But and that's the thing, like taking the sovereignty back, because like we're so passive with the legacy media in a sense. I don't know if I'm using the right term for them, but you just sort of
what we used to call the mainstream media.
let you interpret our reality for us and tell us what's right and what's wrong.
I mean, that has been in decline for some time now, of course.
No, I agree.
If
but it's
anything,
still,
a lot of people would say we've flipped all the way to the other side. We all create our own reality.
Yeah, I mean, CNN is a case in point, right? They're in disarray, where they used to be, the go-to.
Right.
But also like we're creating our own content. We're talking about the things that we want to talk about, like what's important to us, rather than being online or on the TV or anything like that, and just having someone else decide how to think.
Sure.
Because there is like a social conditioning that goes with legacy media, and also I would say a certain amount of propaganda goes with that as well.
And I'm not to push back too far. I'd say probably propaganda is an inevitable part of just about any media possible, including the very first media, which is conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, in the very first, media. I mean, what is mediation after all? I mean, you're taking information and then it's going through a context of some kind and coming out different on the other side. It's being mediated. Even if the only mediation involved is, one person's mindset. There's no way to avoid it.
This is powerful because it's a conversation. And it's not so far one person's point of view being pitched as the way, as opposed to a dynamic kind of bouncing back and forth and asking questions together, sharing thoughts and feelings, but then riffing off of those, like having spaces that people can feel emotionally, physically safe doing this.
Yeah. It's intermediation.
Yeah.
So it's all really fascinating just in terms of like what's going. I feel better at the beginning of the conversation. I feel better now than I did then. So we've shifted, and I'm more hopeful.
It might go downhill from here.
I feel more inspired now, and that's is the importance of having a conversation with a group of people, like-minded people.
Yeah. Or not so like-minded.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
And that's important.
I mean, Jen, you were talking earlier about sort of dealing with the best approach to intermediation in the context of one part of a conversation being angry and how hurt is obviously on the other side or underneath that anger, but which is important. There's also the question of how you deal with the fact that certain things you make you angry, and you should know that. You want to have an understanding of the fact that you might be, as we say, triggered, by something, and how you shouldn't allow that to sort of provoke an internal cancellation of the person that you're talking to.
Sure.
I mean, certainly, at the library, whether it's in a reference interview or in a book group or any other discussion of any kind, it's essential that you be able to maintain, keep the air clear, keep the airwaves clear, between yourself and someone with whom you have potentially profound disagreements, because there are going to be things on which you can still connect with that person, and we should do what we can not to dehumanize one another, because they think something that we think shouldn't be thought.
I agree. And sometimes the person who is probably the most problematic, ends up bringing something to the dance that's really valuable.
Well,
you know?
exactly. Yeah, like, you can be like, well, okay, you said that. We weren't going to say it, but now that you've said it, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
You know.
And to circle back, I mean, I've found, because I've done a lot of community type stuff and initiatives and, sharing wheel and such, but I do run into my own limitations, like you kind of run into some of the things that I need to work out on a personal level, So when I encounter someone who I perceived like maybe narcissistic or something like that, and I have like this reaction, like I can't do it, you know? Well, I'm gonna have to deal with you,
Right.
Because you gotta walk, if I'm gonna be effective in what I've just talked about, and
Right.
moving forward, then I have to grow as well, and so it's a dance,
Yep.
Hopefully I'm making some progress.
Well, that's such a good point, though, because I feel like that continuously comes back to this feeling of like, we can do hard things. We've evolved from our early humanity from everything being fight or flight to physical threat, to being in a world where many don't have as many of those physical threats. We are fortunate we don't live in a war zone. I know there's plenty of places and people who do. And just societally, we've come very far. And with that, I believe we also have the insight and the capacity to learn and like separate when something's actually a threat I need to respond to immediately versus what are the tools individuals can use to take a breath or pause for a moment before responding. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think it is such a gift to be able to respond instead of react in social settings with people we either know or don't know. I think that's a good example of what I was talking about earlier, where that is hard. It can take practice. Everybody's at a different stage of that journey experience. Some maybe haven't even started it, and that is okay. So to come from a place of compassion and not cancel somebody because they aren't using those tools they have or they haven't found any yet, like we get to be gifts for one another through patience. And I don't think that means it's okay. Like I think there's this balance of we can meet people with love and compassion and wherever they are, including ourselves, like that same, we deserve to give that to ourselves, and also push back in a kind way. That thing that you said, Matthew, was kind of hurtful to me.
Right.
I'd love to actually talk about it. I'm not trying to like cut you out.
Yeah.
Maybe we can chat about it. You didn't actually say
No,
something.
I was going to say, I must have
just
done
me
it
practicing.
right because that was my intention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. But I mean, I remember when COVID first hit, my partner and I had chosen to close our business of almost 12 years. I had a new baby, and an administration had come in that I didn't feel aligned with. And that combination of things, plus the pandemic itself being on the like beginning thrust, was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I also remember a very particular moment in hot water where I was just crying. I let my just cry for almost an hour. And then at the end of that like release, I decided that it was really important to me to start communicating more clearly with people when there was hurt on the other side, whatever that looked like, And I just remember so that wasn't that long ago that I remember personally deciding to not be a pleaser and just be okay, everything's great,
Right.
And now it's been however many years, and the practice has gotten so much easier, and it's still hard. But I find myself a lot closer with a variety of people in our community or in my family or, as a result of starting that practice. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, if
like, who am I to judge somebody else if they haven't started?
Yeah,
I guess,
mean,
or they're having a bad day or whatever.
I mean, in my own practice, I mean, at the library and elsewhere, with family, for instance, I think what I try to do is I've gotten myself into this habit of just kind of acknowledging and, to the other person, if they're saying something that I think is outlandishly wrong, or it doesn't have to be hurtful. But it might be hurtful. But, I mean, if they're making a claim about something that I have reason to doubt, or even that I feel certain is 100% incorrect, rather than saying that, I'll just say, well, I'm not, I think there's more actually to that issue, or I'm not entirely sure if you're right about that, or even that's not really true, but so I'll just kind of get that in there, and then, be like, but some version of, but go on, but keep talking,
Sure,
because I want to know more about how it is that they got to whatever it is that has made me feel like I have to make that acknowledgement, and so hopefully by doing that, I get to, well, I feel better about myself. I don't feel like I'm just being a pleaser.
Sure.
I'm acknowledging difference and disagreement without shutting them down.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
This is
right.
Thank you, Matthew.
Oh, sure.
Was resonating with the idea of that enlightenment is the realization that you don't know anything.
Right. Exactly.
Just
Exactly.
a general comment, just
Yes.
and then it's like
And
yeah.
isn't that exciting?
It is.
Yeah. I
No,
feel
it
like
is.
that's
It is.
exciting.
Yeah.
So it's a really easy way to flip
yeah.
what the oppressiveness can feel like for some in certain, all the heavy things that are going on around us. But they don't have to happen to us if we.
So it's interesting, right? So you have this personal sort of development, growth in the interior, but then in the exterior world, you have like Washington, or what's going on the outside. It's an interesting dance, right? The inner self and the outer reality. In a sense, it's like almost a reflection. So it's a fascinating conversation. And what I'd like to do is on down the road a bit, we'll reconvene, and since we had that gap between October here, and we've traveled in a sense, and I'm curious as to, like, say, spring.
We'll be a seasonal group. Yeah.
Like where things are at, in terms of like what's going on out there, what's going on inside, or in the community, and what steps have we, where are we at?
Yeah. We should know a lot more while still essentially knowing nothing.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing that I was chewing on, in a sense, that people's ability to not acclimate, but to adjust to change. And I heard someone speaking like, people, like, things can change around 3%, in society, kind of like inflation. in a
Right.
sense, or
Without anyone becoming particularly upset about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we're in a stage now where we've already used up that 3%.
Yeah.
We're not even,
We're
and
already well beyond that.
yeah, and how far is that going to go out? And when you get into that territory, what effect does it have on the society? Like,
Yeah.
how do people behave?
Yep.
And that's sort of fascinating, where this is going.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Is there a point where kind of people's trust of the social contract buckles somewhat, and then what happens? Yeah.
So I think there's going to
And
be,
of course, we had the threat of that in the first several months of COVID too, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, everything is falling apart.
Yeah.
What is going to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna have this thing where things like this are happening, but on the other thing, things are falling apart.
Right.
So it's a interesting time where things are being built up as the old. I think we spoke about this a little bit last time. things coming up, like on a community level or different levels, and then while these structures are coming down, you know. I mean, yeah, I mean, Trump and his administration are like off to the races, moving fast.
Yep.
So, yeah, and anyhow, it's really, really great to talk to you guys. So insightful, so articulate. Really appreciate chatting with you.
Thanks for
It was a
hosting.
pleasure.
the
Yeah,
space.
thaning for hosting it. And Eric, wherever you are, we missed you. And your
Yeah, Eric, we'll have to have Eric on
Coffee
next time.
Yep.
Yeah, we missed him, his input. And
coffee.
Yeah, he's coffee and Brighton or something like that. Yeah. He's having a conversation somewhere else.
No doubt.
Yeah. And being inspiring, I'm sure. All right, well, thanks, guys.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you next time.
Cheers.